Let's move on to one of my very favorite topics, and that's Jim Hall.
Yeah.
I've been doing this for a while now. We've interviewed a lot of people, and we've published probably 1,000 articles. We put out 4 articles today. We'll probably put out another four. I mean, we're putting out prodigious amounts of material every day. So we talk to a lot of people. Jim Hall is always in the conversation. Always. Anybody that you talk to will put him in the top one, two, three, four. Some guys get to 5, but most of the time he's in the top 3. People like Kenny Burrell will come and go, and Joe Pass is usually. I mean, you know those names, but
Well, it's going to be Charlie
Yeah.
Christian's going to be in the top 3.
But Jim is always there, and the people that mention his name are always people that I respect. And you and I think, have talked about this a little bit. And the fact that he's from Buffalo, New York, my hometown, which is kind of where he grew up or was born or whatever. I just love his music and his style. And then he got to be a huge collaborator / client of yours. I believe the story is that, you were taking care of his D'Acquisto guitar. And it got to be, if I remember correctly, and please correct me if I'm wrong, it got to be the point where he was a little concerned about its value and traveling with it and getting worried about it getting irretrievably broken, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, this was a D'Acquisto laminate guitar. Okay?
Yeah.
The body was laminated.
Right.
And recall he had it insured for $60,000.
Right, that's the number I remember, yeah.
And I do remember the last batch I remember Jimmy made, I think sold for about 13 or 14,000 back
in those days.
In the 90s,
Yeah, that was more like about, if that's a $30,000 guitar today.
Right, today, yeah, sure. Yeah. So yeah, I've been taking care of Jim and his guitars. He takes a long time to decide what he likes. Okay, he would want to try a new pickup, and I'd put it in.
Yeah.
And 6 months later, he'd come back and say, "I want to go back to the original pickup." That would happen several times, or he'd go through periods where he'd play a wound G for a few months, and then he'd want a plain G for a few months. And, I had to have different saddles for him so he could, for the intonation difference between a wound G and a plain G. But he was a simple guy from a gear point of view. And he really only played that one guitar. I mean, for the time that I knew him. Before that, everyone knows he played a 175 that belonged to George Ellis. He had an all-acoustic D'Acquisto as well, but I never saw him play that instrument. But
Was his D'Acquisto, was it a maple top or was it a spruce top?
A laminate?
Yeah,
maple top.
It was a maple top D'Acquisto guitar, because I was curious. I did not know that. I know that this instrument that you built for him is a maple top.
Right. Right. Well, I prototyped a maple top and a spruce top for him.
Yeah.
The spruce top was a pressed top, and the maple was a laminate. And I remember we did the AB in my sound room with Rick Razor from Razor's Edge Cabinet.
Yeah, sure.
The spruce top was warmer, but it fed back so much easier than the maple top. Warmer acoustically. It was on the muddy side through an amp, and it fed back easier. The maple top just was clearly the winner, and I've been doing maple tops on the orange tops ever since.
We talked about your process and what you went through to, people. Back last year we talked about laminate versus solid wood guitars, and the advantage of laminate if it's done right, and the process that you went through to source your laminate, your laminations, if you will, which was quite an ordeal. You want to say a few words about that?
Sure. Just so people know, back in the day, D'Acquisto didn't make his own laminates. I believe he got them all from Roger Boris, who was making laminates. And so he got the sides and the tops and the backs from Roger. The sides were solid maple. And so when I wanted to get into it, I wanted a heavier figure on the maple than what you call a most veneers that are cut round off of a log tend to be kind of plain, like a 335 would be.
Right. Sure.
Okay, or 175.
Mm-hmm.
So I was looking for a more highly figured look of the top and the back. I started working with Dana Bourgeois up in Maine. He tried really hard, but he couldn't get the tops thin enough for what I wanted.
Right.
I knew I wanted a 5-ply top, and they were just too thick and too heavy. And then I got a few from Germany. They were 3-ply, and the outer plies were so thin, if you slightly oversanded, you were right through the outer veneer and into the core.
Yeah.
And then I found a top that an instrument with a top I really liked. I found out it was made from a specific factory in Japan. And I approached them, and they wouldn't sell just the tops and backs to me. So I decided let them make the instrument to my specifications, my design, and I would do as much of the final work as possible. For me, includes screwing the fingerboard, fretting, cutting the nut, and I make my own bridge saddles. I do. I think I'm the only one who makes 2 saddles come with every guitar. One's for a wound G and one's for a plain G. Ebony saddles. I supply all the electronics, and so that's what I've been doing since 2004.
So we're getting back to the Jim Hall instrument that you make. Your laminates, you source them, you source the bodies.
They're quite thin. They're in metric. They're 3.8 millimeters thick, 5-layered of veneers.
And they're a working man's guitar.
That's exactly what I wanted. I mean, look at the 175. I mean, it's probably the most popular jazz guitar on the planet, and it really works well. Again, my model is always take an existing guitar that we all know works well, and try to take it to a higher level. And that's basically what I did. But going back to Jim, so I said to Jim one day, it was probably around 2002, 2003. I said to him, Jim, if I came out with an affordable archtop that you would actually want to play yourself, would you get behind me? Because he'd never endorsed a guitar in his entire career. And he said, yeah. He said, my students have an impossible time finding a decent guitar at a decent price. This was when, carved archtops were in the $15,000 to $30,000 range.
I remember the days.
Yeah. And I said to myself, I don't know any working musicians who can afford it. Not only can afford it, but would take it on a brunch gig where it's got a cymbal right next to him and it could turn and smack into the cymbal,
It's, I have an archtop that went out on one gig with me, and it's exactly what almost happened to it. A cymbal stand fell over, and it didn't hit the guitar, but it was this far away from it, and I went, the F-bomb.
Exactly.
And I said, I was a nervous wreck right after that, because it was one of these gigs. I took 3 guitars to the gig. I took an I-35, that kind of that 335 kind of thing, a solid body guitar, and that guitar with me.
Right.
And they were sitting there on the stands, pretty big stage. And then for some stupid reason, and I went, oh my God. And that's the last time it left the house for a gig.
Yeah. Guitar stands and cymbals are the guitar enemy.
And people, well-minded people, small stages, even people like, the saxophone player. You've seen saxophones on their stands. It's just not good. And nobody does anything on purpose. So it just happens.
Of course. And like the kind of thought processes I go through is I put my output jack on my archtops at an unusual location. They're put just south. If you're holding the guitar, they're just south of the end block of the guitar.
Right.
One of the reasons I do that is, including Jim's DeQuisto,
Mm-hmm.
had a situation where someone stepped on his cord, ripped a huge chunk out of the side of his instrument. And for me, it was like putting Humpty Dumpty back together again. And I realized how weak a spot the traditional jack location is on an archtop.
Right.
On the other hand, a lot of people went to putting the jack in where a combination end pin jack right in the block.
Yeah.
And those jacks aren't the best, and the strap holders are terrible.
I have real frustration. Not only that, if you use a straight pin,
right,
you put it on a guitar stand, your cord is. I hate those things, and I own two of them, and I just.
So those are the little things that I obsess over.
Yeah, no, well, you're obviously very astute and big, because I can tell you it pisses me off because I've got one guitar cord that I bought that's a right angle.
Right.
And of course, I can never find it when it's time to go to the gig.
You got to buy more than one.
Yeah, you got to buy more than one. And I buy pretty good cords, and they're not cheap. Like Magami cords are $100. I mean, it's a lot of money. So let's just run right past. Let's run right in the LS15, et cetera. And that's I would call it that the gigging guy's guitar that doesn't want to play a solid body, I guess.
You're talking about the LS 17 or 15?
15.
Okay. So do you have one of those?
I do not, but I play Trey Wright has one.
Okay.
I've lusted after one.
And he has an LS, not an SS.
He has an SS, actually.
That's right.
Yeah.
All right. So let me share something with you as far as trends goes.
Okay.
First of all, my big boy or big girl is my LS17.
Yeah, the L5 kind of instrument.
Yeah, and I made that guitar, designed it for the L5 Lover.
Right.
It's not as deep. It's only 2 3/4 inch deep, but it's 17-inch bout, and it's a 25.5-inch long scale. I've come to the end of that model. People are just not playing big archtops anymore.
Nope.
Okay. So I think I have my showroom sample left to clean up and sell, and I'm done with the LS17. Interestingly enough, the LS15, as popular as my SS15 is, with a 24 3/4 inch scale is, the LS15 has not gained traction. And so I'm at the point now where all my instruments are going to be short scale, 24 3/4. I don't see where people are buying my long scale guitars.
That is interesting to me because I have a tendency to play the 25.5.
I understand that.
Yeah.
So grab one while you can.
Well, I have a couple of them, and I've got a couple of
I mean, honestly, I sent both to Lee Rittenauer last year, and only the short scale resonated with him. And given that he's an L5 guy as well.
Yeah, that's interesting. That he is an L5 guy. And what's really funny is when we had the instruments down here, and Trey Wright and we did the reviews on the instruments.
Right.
Trey. I played both of them quite a bit, and I and my other friend, Bill Hart, who there's a school down here called AIM. He was the guitar guy down here for 30 years, and he had a lot of 25.5-inch, and we all liked the shorter scale guitar. I think it's something. I think the notes pop off of that body a little differently or something.
Well, sure. Look, you can hear it right away. You can feel it right away, even though it's only 3/4 inch.
Right.
The higher string tension of the long scale, you've got a more immediate response from the string to your attack, and it's tighter. Okay. The shorter scale, aside from the lower string tension, it's a warmer, rounder sound. And I love the sound of the long scale, but I've come to the conclusion that almost everyone's gravitating towards the short scale version.
Well, you can still bend strings, You get that. You can set it up with 10s if you want.
Yeah, or you could put a capo on the first fret.
Put a cape on the first. Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, listen, I think we've had a great conversation here. Is there anything that you would like to add to this before we wrap
Yeah,
it
you
up?
got another 3 hours because I could keep going.
You know, I actually could. I really could. I'm thinking more about your time because
So I'm just curious whether we address my solid body guitars as much as you originally intended.
I think we have.
Okay.
I think we have. I think that people need to understand that you've been building those solid body guitars for a long time, and I think I can't think of anybody. I mean, obviously there's John Suhr out there in California, who at one time was in New York.
John's a great friend of mine. He makes great guitars.
And he makes great guitars, and he was in on that Super Strat thing, and James.
The thing for me is I don't think I'm appealing to any shredders or rock and roll guys with what I do.
No, you know? I know what you're saying. You know, you're after the it's a different vibe.
I'm after the guys who still play club dates,
right?
Still record, and again are looking for maximum tonal versatility in one instrument. Okay.
Yeah.
And I don't think I appeal to guys who use a lot of pedals either. You know, my guitars are really optimized to be plug and play into a board, into an amp. You know, so I understand all that.
Well, you know what's really funny is, you know, back a few years ago, I was going to say back in the day, but it wasn't that long ago. I would have been one of these guys that I don't want active electronics, because I remember guitars with active electronics, and they really
they were horrible.
Yeah, they were really bad, and that includes Alembic and all kinds of people.
And Gibsons.
Well, they were all bad. I mean, the word shitty comes to mind, but this is a family show, and you know, I mean, they're just awful. I mean, they were so piercing, and there was no but.
Well, I remember back in the 70s. I worked at a retail store. I ran the repair department, and there were some Gibson guitars and some other guitars that they got like 30 different sounds, but only 2 were good.
Well, you're being kind.
I know.
Those things, for the impedances that came in and all of the roll-offs that happened because of that circuit was there.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Like the active Les Paul guitar.
There was nothing there.
Exactly.
I mean, once you put that thing in there, it was just a tone killer. And that's what I remember. But, you know.
So I always vowed to never want to have excessive switches or bells and whistles.
Right.
And I only wanted tones coming out of my instrument that were musical and usable.
So my pedal board now has got 4 pedals on it. That's it. I've got a reverb and a delay. I'm going to an overdrive and a pre-overdrive, if you will.
Right.
And really what most of that is all about. The overdrives are set up to do exactly like what your preamp is doing. It's like a mid boost to bring out the solos, and that's what I'm down to. I mean, at one time I had 2 pedal boards wired together, and I mean, I never went the Bradshaw rack thing, you know, but I had all this stuff, and I, you know, obviously I eschewed all that, and so the idea of having, you know, those electronics on board has really intrigued me, and the fact that you've had it like forever, obviously, on your instruments, and your preamp is so well known in the bass world, you know, I mean, that's a whole other thing, but I mean, I know that you know what you're doing when it comes to
you know, the approach to the guitar preamp is diametrically opposite from the bass preamp. I do not have a mid boost on my bass preamp at all.
Where I was coming from is that you have a knowledge of electronics.
No, I understand that. Yeah. I understand that. And by the same token, I'd be the first to say that a guy with 20 pedals on a board,
right?
Why do you need a guitar of my quality if you're playing through all those pedals?
Yeah, and that's why I'm down to 4 pedals.
Yeah,
you know?
I get it.
And frankly, many times I just take 1. And what I take, like tonight when we're done, I'm going to a little jam session. There's a place that does a socially distanced jam session. I go there most Thursday nights, wear a mask and, you know, hazmat suit and the whole 9 yards. And I'll just take 1 pedal in with me, and it's basically a tube screamer. I'll throw it on the floor with a battery, and we're done. And then when it comes time to do a solo, it's not set up to do crazy gain. It's set up to do a mid boost with some mild overdrive
Sure.
solos.
Sure.
And so that's exactly what's built into that instrument.
Well, great minds think alike, Bob.
Well, yeah, I don't know about. I think average minds copy great minds is what I'm thinking. That's where I'm coming from.
I was trying to compliment you.
Oh well, yeah, I know. Yeah, I know. I appreciate that. Thank you very much.
So anyway, I'm available anytime you want to do this on any topic. I've been around a long time.
Well, I did see that you have got a video of how to set up your bass.
Yes.
And you've got such a wonderful demeanor about you. You're not quite Mr. Rogers. I don't want.
I'm Mr. Roger.
You're Mr. Rogers.
Leave the S off.
There you go. But you got this warm thing going on, and when you're explaining it, you go, yeah, all right, I get what he's saying.
Thank you. I appreciate that a lot.
It's really well done. And I'm thinking, okay, so when's he going to put the solid body on the table?
All right, well, I'll do a separate guitar one.
I think you should. I think you should, because a lot of people don't really, all these concepts that people talk about. I mean, I follow a lot of the forums, I'm not on them like all day or anything like that. I don't contribute that much, but I look to see what people are talking about.
Of course.
And I don't want to call it misinformation. I want to call it just ignorance.
Well, yeah, there is. And there is on YouTube too.
Yeah.
There's so many videos.
Yeah. And these people they'll say things and I've heard it a million times. And you go, you repeat something long enough, and it's supposed to be true. Well, what did Ayn Rand say? You could ignore reality, but you can't ignore the consequences of ignoring reality.
Right.
So, at any rate, yeah, I think doing a guitar video would be a very, very.
No, I would like to do more. I really would.
Yeah, I thought you did a fabulous job on that, by the way.
Thank you.
Well, listen, I can't thank you enough. I really appreciate it. I told you we'd be on for 15 minutes. We've probably been on for an hour.
Yeah, just about.
And honestly, we could go for 3 more. We really could, because I can dive in, and we'll do this again.
Yeah, let's do it again. As often as you like.
We'll get real specific on specific things, and and all that kind of stuff. And I
thoroughly enjoyed talking with you, Bob.
It's such a thrill. It's a thrill for me. It really is.
Well,
so I really appreciate it.
Have
a great evening. So,
all right,
Bob
Take
Bakert,
care. Stay healthy.
Roger Sadowsky with Sadowsky Guitars and Jazz Guitar today. And good night, everybody. And good night, Roger. God bless.
Good night. Bye.
Bye-bye.